this guy. He's a brilliant journalist. His investigative work on voter suppression, I think, is without peer, and his movie is a must-watch. Vigilantes, Inc. He'll tell you all the places you can see it. I think it's widely available. You can watch it on YouTube as well, I'm pretty sure. But it's terrific. And if you really want an insight into what's happening with U.S. elections, I think you really have to see it. Here he is, the great Greg Palast, everybody. Well, sir.
I'll be formal and button up.
Yeah, yeah, we got the memo on the black today. Greg, these are dark times for elections in America. I feel as though we're sliding the wrong way. The manipulation, the data manipulation, all of that, that's one issue, okay? And we've talked about that. I talked about it at length last week. Nathan Taylor's done a lot of work on that. The other issue, and it's, again, high art in some of these regions of the country where they just understand how to suppress the vote in new and different ways. That's the part that you so effectively lay out in Vigilantes, Inc. And I think it's the work that you continue to do because they continue to find new ways to suppress the vote.
Indeed. That's the trick. Look, they're stealing a 26th election right now. Understand, I know everyone wants to think that Musk has sent spiders from outer space to play with the machines. Okay, white people, wake up. That's not how you steal elections. You steal elections by suppressing the vote of people of color. There's two ways to win an election. Get people to vote for you. That's called democracy. The other is to stop your opponent's voters from voting. That's called vote suppression. And let me give you some numbers. If you go to gregpalast.com, it says Trump lost, vote suppression won. Here are the numbers. I was a professor of statistics, by the way, and I've testified about this in federal court for the ACLU, NAACP, and Rainbow Push. So this is what I do for a living, is do these numbers. And here's the deal. In 2023, before the election, there were 4.7 million people purged from the voter rolls, which were absolutely suspect. I'm not guessing. I hired some of the top people that work with Microsoft and American Express, who are specialists at addresses. And we found that 66.3% were actually legal voters, but overwhelmingly voters of color who were removed from the voter rolls wrongly. And if you watch Vigilantes, Inc., you won't just get a bunch of statistics and numbers. You get to meet some of these people. One is, I was at a Georgia polling station when, and it was storming. A woman in a walker going through the rain with her granddaughter to vote, and they throw her out. She'd been voting at the same place for 50 years in Georgia, and they took her off the voter rolls. They said she didn't live there anymore in Georgia. Well, I went to her house down the street, and there was a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall having dinner with her, which meant she's been in that house for 50 years. I said, "You knew King?" He says, "He was my cousin." So they removed Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin from the voter rolls.
It's a great moment in the movie, by the way. There are a few good,
There's
moments
a lot,
like that. Yeah.
And then you have the new gimmick, which I'm very concerned about. And this year is when they're purging the voter rolls. 440,000 voters are facing removal from the voter rolls in Georgia alone. Then you've got Wisconsin. Wisconsin's using a horrific system called ERIC, which I also investigated for Black Voters Matter Fund and the ACLU. And what we found is that this thing is phonier than a $3 bill. They use it, almost all the people removed from the voter rolls in 23, and you're going to see it again this year, were Black people out of Milwaukee and students in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, what color are they? Blue. Okay.
But wait 1 second, Greg, because I would think Wisconsin, particularly with the Supreme Court in Wisconsin having been won by center-left candidate, having beaten back the right-wing candidate, and that was a highly publicized election, I would think they'd be in a disposition that would be anti-voter suppression, like they'd be against the kind of things that
but then you got to go to court. And, again, so what happens, they have an election board, which has stopped a lot of things, but there's all this GOP pressure. Remember, they control the legislature. Voting laws are passed by state legislatures, not by governors, not by courts. It's by the Republican legislature of Wisconsin, which is gunning for students, gunning for Black people. In fact, they have a voter ID law in Wisconsin, and you can use your gun license as ID to vote. You can't use your student ID to vote, even though the University of Wisconsin system with over 100,000 students, you can imagine what their votes are, and they cannot use their ID. So where do they get ID? And now you've got a new thing. The SAVE Act, which was just passed in the House and already ordered into place by Donald Trump through executive order, which says you must prove your citizenship in order to vote. And you think, well, that's not so bad. Everyone should be a citizen to vote. Well, okay, listeners, viewers, where's your original birth certificate? I mean, your original birth certificate. No copies, please. Your original birth certificate or your passport. And I can tell you this. Only 1 in 3 Black people have a passport. Actually, only half of Americans in general have passports. Proof of citizenship is passport, original birth certificate, or naturalization papers. That's it, baby. And not your military ID. When they passed this law that you had to be a citizen to vote in Kansas, they removed 36,000 people. And Chris Kobach, the Purgeon general, Trump's buddy, went into federal court and said, we blocked 36,000 people who couldn't prove their citizenship. And then the court asked, were any of them non-citizens? He said, no, we checked. Not one of them. Not a single one was a non-citizen, but they lost their right to vote, including Air Force officers, Black Air Force officers, of course, who didn't at the Lawrence military base have their have an original birth certificate with them.
This original birth certificate thing, Greg, it would affect so many Americans, as you say. I don't know that I can find my original birth certificate. I don't think I can.
Well,
so
think about this one. 69 million women, 69 million women in America change their last name on marriage. Good luck trying to vote. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to, it's for registration. So if you're registered and you don't move, it's fine. But about 34 million Americans move every year. So you have to re-register. When you re-register, you better, when you move, find that birth certificate, find that passport. Otherwise, you ain't voting.
What is
and they know who that is.
What is the policy solution to push back on this, to somehow throw a bone to the push for some kind of voter ID? The problem with voter ID is it's so associated with what you're talking about, voter suppression and trying to keep the Black vote in the South from showing up.
Or in the North. I mean, in Indiana, when the first, there wasn't a single state in America that required an ID to vote until 2008, when Obama was running. And the state of Indiana, hoping to stop Obama from winning, he did anyway, by the way, won Indiana. To stop Obama, they passed a law requiring voter ID. And 10 nuns went to vote, and they were denied the right to vote because they had driver's licenses, but the driver's licenses had expired because they were all in their 80s and 90s and didn't drive, these nuns. That went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, too bad. Indiana could do this, even though the state of Indiana admitted that in 100 years of record keeping, 100 years, they didn't find a single voter taking someone else's identity to vote, which is the issue.
Sure.
Not a single voter in 100 years, but we passed this law, and
it's a draconian solution in search of a problem. There is no problem.
Exactly, and they know who doesn't have access to their ID, who doesn't drive. Black people generally in Indiana, in Gary, Indiana, which is a northern tier of Indiana, is a huge Black community, a working class community. Those people don't have passports. They ain't going to France for their holidays. And a lot of them don't have driver's license. They use the bus system. It's urban. And so they know who they're excluding when they do these ID games. And when Democrats stupidly, idiotically go along with it, like Jimmy Carter, I call him the dangerous Christian. Nice guy, but he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And he went along with this ID stuff. And this is a real danger. And by the way, I have a lot of problems. There's a lot of rich people say, what's the big deal? Well, because your chauffeur could vouch for you, so you don't need ID. But I'm telling you, none of these evils could happen to some extent without Democratic.
Here it is. CC Ryder says Democrats still want to find reasons to give MAGA the benefit of the doubt on occasion. Stop this. They are cruel, greedy, corrupt, manipulative thugs. Don't ever give them the benefit of the doubt. But this actually predated MAGA. What's happening? I mean, this isn't all just MAGA. This is a system that's gone on for I think this is what's interesting about your work, Greg. It's been refined and it's been accelerated and amplified through time, but it's been around since voting started.
Oh yeah, I mean, we started with the election of 1878 after the Civil War. The Democrat Tilden won. He won the popular vote and he won the electoral vote, but it was challenged by the GOP, and it came down. And what they did was they removed one of Tilden's electors and gave the election to the Republican in return for Democratic votes out of the South to end Reconstruction and end the military occupation of the South. And that was the birth of the Ku Klux Klan. So basically, we've been there before. And again, there was complicity by some Democrats, because remember, the Democrats were the party of Jim Crow. Republicans were the party of Lincoln and freedom. And that position has gone reversed, right? And so so we've had this a long time, the black laws, but now we got new stuff. In fact, in 1946, the Klan came up with a plan where you have individuals, vigilantes, challenging the votes of every black person. That was 1946. That was shut down by the FBI. Now it's come back, and it's not being shut down by Kash Patel's FBI, where these Ku Klux Klan plan is being used by the Republican Party and Donald Trump to remove so-called illegal voters, including, if you'll see in my film, Major Gamaliel Turner. Here's one of the Pentagon's top experts, 70 years old. He's assigned to the military base in California, and Georgia would not give him a ballot. He's a Georgian. They wouldn't give this Major Turner his ballot because he was challenged by a Republican Party official, not a government official, but a Republican Party official who blocked his ballot, and 4,000 other soldiers out of Fort Benning. This is what the GOP is doing. They're attacking soldiers. Don't let them talk about patriotism when we love our veterans.
But
Yeah,
listen
they
to
don't love
those
them enough to let them
numbers.
vote.
I mean, I'm so astounded by the numbers in your work.
Okay.
You have
Yes.
reviewed. I mean, it's thousands of people being thrown off the voter rolls. It's
Yes,
one
hundreds
person,
of
and
thousands,
yeah, and you know, you've talked about the ability of one person to throw off tens of thousands of people from the voter
Yes.
rolls. It sounds absurd, but it literally happens. You can see it in your film.
Yes, well, under Georgia law and many other states, Georgia law is explicit that one person can challenge as many voters as they want in their county. And you'll see in my film a woman, a Republican Party official. She works for Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she's not a government official. She personally challenged 32,000 voters.
That was the most
32,000
amazing
voters.
thing. Yeah.
And then she was heavily armed, and she chased me out of her house, so I wasn't able to finish that discussion. And then I meet with a guy who dresses like a vigilante, who's chairman of the Republican Party in Southern Georgia. And he's the guy who challenged 4,000 soldiers, most of them black soldiers, out of Fort Benning. And that guy, all those 4,000 soldiers lost their vote, except for Major Turner. They told him, all you have to do is fly in, come in and change your register, prove your citizenship. He says, wait a minute, I'm in California. You're telling me to come 2 days before an election, fly to Georgia, 2,700 miles to prove I'm a citizen again? This is a black veteran, not a veteran. He was active duty at the time. And his father was co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Martin Luther King. So they picked on the wrong guy. So he did fly 5,000 miles round trip. Yeah. He got his vote counted.
Yeah,
but,
to prove a point, he did it. But I mean, as
yeah.
you said, Kim is asking, since Vigilante's film has been released, and it has been released to, so widespread reaction, is there any movement to change the voter challenging system and protect voters, is the question.
Yes, I've gotten calls from some congressmen, and I don't know if you know who Bernie Sanders is. He's a senator, and he and Jesse Jackson and I got together, like, how do we take this on? And I would like to have more members of the Congressional White Caucus. I've talked to a lot, like Jonathan Jackson, Black Congress. So the Congressional Black Caucus is on top of this. Black Voters Matter, NAACP, but we really need, hey, my fellow white people, get off the Starlink monkey business and get on the vote suppression trail. And in fact, one of our new associates who's joined us, she's working on a campaign to register people in jails because unless you're convicted of a felony, serving for a felony crime, you have the right to vote. There are close to 20 million ex-cons in America that could vote and don't know it. That would change everything. We have 9 million green card holders who could become citizens quickly. If you get green card holders registered, ex-cons registered, that'll change the political face of America. That you want to change something? Join that campaign. Start registering people and make sure that people check their registration so they don't show up and say, hey, you're out of luck. You're not on the voter rolls. 60 days before an election, you check your registration. If you don't come crying to me that you lost your vote.
That's good advice, regardless of what state you're voting in.
I want state.
I want to mention again, it's Vigilantes Inc. And you should check it out. Tell everybody it's. I want to say, I know originally you could only see it in a couple of places. Now I feel like you can see Vigilantes Inc. in a lot of places.
Yes. Well, what we did is we moved it to YouTube. So and remember, it's Vigilantes Inc., not just Vigilantes. It's Vigilantes Inc., or just put in Palast Vigilantes, and you can get onto the YouTube site. We've had over 1/3 people watch it there, and about another 500,000 from other sites. You go to gregpalast.com. So YouTube or gregpalast.com, and you can stream it for free. Thank you, Jamie Foxx and Leonardo DiCaprio, for making that possible, who have been supporting our work. And
well, congratulations. I mean, it really is a terrific film. And as I say, even since you've released the film, there's even been more aggressive efforts to throw people off the voter rolls. And so I feel it's as timely as ever. I mean, it's crazy how like every hour they're finding new ways. The other thing, Greg, and then I want to get your impressions on the Epstein thing, because I know you know a lot about it. But the other thing that is laughable to me, and I made this point before on the show, that they would somehow suggest that as part of a Democratic plan to win elections, that they would open the border to bring in undocumented migrants such that they would then flood the voter rolls. That is the most ridiculous thing I could possibly conceive of. It's so ridiculous so as to not even demand a retort of any kind. Yet that is the position.
I spoke, the guy that is promoting this, Chris Kobach, who's the Attorney General of Kansas. And like I say, he's Trump's purging general. He's the guy that Trump made his vote fraud czar. He is the center of this claim that there are zillions of, he said 5 million, and the Heritage Foundation's repeated that, the people from Project 2025. He said 5 million undocumented people, non-citizens, are on the voter rolls voting for Democrats. So I asked him, 5 million. And remember, they're registered. So you have their names, you got their addresses, you have their social security numbers. So you got 5 million people. Can you give me the names of 5? He couldn't. I said, can you give me the name of one? And I can tell you, when Florida started this purging the rolls of what they claimed were non-citizens, they got a whole bunch of Jose Garcias, and they found of 178,000 people that the state of Florida removed or tried to remove from the voter rolls. A lot of them were removed. They found one single alien voter, an Austrian Republican. It wasn't Arnold. But it was one out of 178,000. But they dropped a lot of Jose Garcias off those voter rolls. So this is what they're going to start doing now again with Trump's executive order. If you read the executive order, here's the fun line in it, that the Doge administrator at that time, Mr. Musk, and now the only person in America who would be worse than Musk is Voight, who's now been put in charge, the guy who wrote Project 2025. And he will have access to all the state voter files. Can you imagine anything more dangerous?
He's a despicable guy from the standpoint of political philosophy, and as you say, one of the prime authors of Project 2025.
This is vicious, racist stuff, but they're not racist like emotionally. They probably have a lot of black friends. They just don't want black people to vote.
Yeah, it's a political power play, and it's got ugliness at its core. All right, I want to quickly ask you about something else.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Greg Palast, you are a distinguished investigative reporter, and you know something or two about the Epstein case. The Epstein case celebrated for both the lurid quality it had, of course, the heinous quality it had with, human trafficking and all that sort of thing. And then all the luminaries worldwide that were apparently associated with Jeffrey Epstein and might have even been involved in Epstein Island, etc. Can you tell me what you know about the supposed suicide and his jailing, and what you can comment on this?
Well, I'd like to comment on this MAGA reaction. Look, Alex Jones, by the way, was a very good friend of mine when he was, by the way, a left-wing populist, and then he changed. Why? It's all about the money. So he's got a new money-making gimmick going. He's going to talk about, the cover-up and Pam Bondi. Well, Bondi played this game by saying, I have a list of Epstein's clients. Well, he wasn't running a brothel. He was a businessman, demi-billionaire. But here's a question I have. What did Donald Trump know, and when did he know it? The reason I ask this question is that if you are aware of a crime, even if you didn't commit it, there's no indication that Trump is into young ladies. He's into supermodels, right? But when he was asked about all his associations with Epstein, he said, "Oh, he's into young girls," and then he winked and said, "Very young girls." So what did Donald know, and when did he know it? The reason I asked the question that way, for those of you who are old enough to remember Watergate, the reason why Richard Nixon was facing impeachment and had to resign was the simple question about the Watergate break-in. He didn't order the Watergate break-in. The question was, what did he know, and when did he know it? If you know of a rapist and someone who is enticing or threatening underage women, that's a crime. And if you know about it, you are now a co-conspirator committing that crime. Ask, by the way, the cardinal of the Catholic Church for Los Angeles, who covered up that his priests were involved in monkey business with underage people. He went to prison. You go to jail. If you know about these crimes, you go to prison. Do you really think Kash Patel is going to have this guy charged? I would like to know not who the clients were, but who knew what when. Let's not forget that Bill Gates' wife, Melinda Gates, divorced him after finding out he was messing around with Epstein.
Well, she divorced him. We don't know that's the reason. But,
that was right after that. So I don't think
the revelations that Gates spent time with Epstein. It's true
that she thought that he was just having lunch there, but I don't know.
No.
But I don't know. The question is,
why
aren't they put under oath? Remember, 2019, Trump was president. Why didn't his FBI haul in everyone who knew Epstein, put them under oath, and say, what did you know, and when did you know it? And were you a participant? Put them under oath. Why didn't that happen under Donald Trump?
Yeah, there's a lot under this, and it seems as though it may be associated with those who had very strong relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, and there even there's a trail of breadcrumbs back to Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was a Mossad operative, it's suggested, and so there's all of this international intrigue associated with this, and there's also just plain old, as I said at the beginning, lurid interest in this this sex machine that he set up in New York and overseas and on his island, etc. And apparently was all videoed, and it's a pretty twisted tale,
Well, what's nice about it for Trump, he started a tariff war again, which is going to tank the economy. So we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the big ugly bill. That's gone. We're not talking about losing your Medicaid. We're not talking about war with Iran. We're not talking about abandoning Ukraine. We're not talking about nothing. We're talking about young ladies and all this nonsense. So the distractor in chief has done it again.
Yeah.
He's
it's
done
true.
it again. We're not talking about those. That's why I appreciate you're starting out with the discussion of vote suppression. We do have to deal with the Epstein thing because it shows how this system is twisted and works for the rich,
And how it covers for, how it covers
and
for
how it's
itself.
covering,
Yeah.
and who they're covering up for. So we do have to ask that question. But the right wing's theory that there's some type of list. Well, of course, I got that from the Attorney General of the United States, who said they had a list. But it's a nutty idea. It's a wrong distraction, and it's the wrong questions to be asking about this whole matter.
Yeah, I think on the list thing, just to button it out, you make such a good point. It wasn't a brothel per se, where you have a list of clients like the Heidi Fleiss thing when then
Right.
that busted open.
Yeah,
but you have, I guess, plain manifests and people who were there, but that doesn't prove that there was anything untoward going on. It proves that they're.
That's right. I mean,
in
Noam
the
Chomsky
same
had
way,
lunch with
right. Right,
You know, with
the lunch
Epstein.
that Sam Giancana had with somebody from the Kennedy administration or whatever. It's sort of like you can't prove anything just because they had lunch together. So
yeah, and I think we have to be very cautious about that. But the question is why, so instead we have this nonsense distraction about lists and
right
and stuff like that.
You're saying that
That's
only plays into the distraction.
Yeah, exactly, and that's nonsense. And we are not talking about what's happening with this economy. We're not talking about the fact that some guy said he was going to bring down prices and inflation was going to end on day one. Instead, prices are going up, and the price of eggs is still $9 a dozen. And so they don't want to talk about that. They're going to want to talk about young ladies.
I leave you with this. B.A. Ware says, "How old is Greg? He looks great."
I just had my 73rd birthday.
Wow,
if that doesn't
hey.
scare you.
Come on, kid. You look good.
Girl, you just woo.
All right, Greg Palast. Vigilantes Inc.'s available on YouTube. Also go to gregpalast.com for all of the latest. As I say, it's an unfolding story. There's way more. Greg does investigative work every day, and a lot of it finds its way to gregpalast.com. Thanks for stopping through, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Greg Palast, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.